Did you know that your everyday morning routine, the same one you followed for years, might be quietly setting you up for a stroke most older adults in America never suspect it? They assume strokes strike suddenly out of nowhere like lightning. But after decades studying the aging brain, I can tell you the earliest warnings don't start in a hospital room. They start in your bedroom, your kitchen, your bathroom, right in the first hour after you wake up. Because after age 60, your brain enters the morning in its most fragile state. Your blood is thicker, your pressure is rising, your vessels are stiffer, and certain habits, common harmless-looking habits, can triple your stroke risk before you even pour your first cup of coffee. In this video, I will reveal the hidden morning triggers most seniors never recognize until it is too late, and the simple changes that could protect your brain for years to come. Before we dive in, if you have not subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, please type the word 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. Let us begin with habit number 1, drinking coffee immediately after waking up. When I speak with my older patients here in the United States, I often begin with a question that seems harmless. What is the first thing you put into your body each morning? Most smile and answer proudly, "Doctor, my coffee." I have done it for 40 years. But after decades, as a brain physician, I can tell you this familiar American morning ritual is one of the most underestimated triggers of early morning strokes in adults over 60. Here is the physiological reason why. During the night, your body enters a long, unbroken stretch without fluid, usually 6 to 8 hours. As we age, the body loses its ability to retain moisture efficiently, meaning older adults naturally wake up in a state of mild dehydration. In medical terms, this nighttime dehydration increases blood viscosity, meaning the blood becomes thicker, slower, and heavier. Thick blood forces the heart to pump harder and reduces the smooth, steady flow your brain depends on every second. Now imagine what happens when this already thick blood meets your morning cup of coffee. Caffeine, especially on an empty stomach, acts as a diuretic, pulling even more water from your system and worsening the dehydration you already woke up with. At the same time, caffeine stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, creating a surge in heart rate and blood pressure just minutes after you open your eyes. For a healthy 30-year-old, that surge may not cause much trouble. But for someone over 60, whose arteries are stiffer and whose blood vessels are narrower, this combination becomes extremely dangerous. It triggers strokes because the addition of dehydration plus caffeine produces a sudden spike capable of overwhelming delicate vessels in the brain. Furthermore, thick, concentrated blood is far more likely to clot, and when caffeine constricts the blood vessels, that narrowing increases the chance a clot will get stuck, resulting in an ischemic stroke. I still remember an 82-year-old patient of mine from Arizona. He had no major medical problems, no smoking history, and walked a mile every day. However, he began experiencing brief episodes of hand clumsiness and trouble recalling simple words at breakfast. His scans later showed he had had small silent TIAs, tiny strokes occurring shortly after waking. His only consistent habit was drinking strong black coffee every morning before drinking a single sip of water. When we reversed that routine, water first, coffee 20 to 30 minutes later, those episodes stopped completely. Now let us move on to point number 2, sitting too long on the edge of the bed without moving. Among my older patients here in the United States, this is one of the habits they almost never think about. They wake up, push themselves upright, sit on the edge of the bed, and stay there sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for 20, waiting for their body to warm up. It feels harmless and gentle, but medically for adults over 60, this quiet stillness is far from harmless. In fact, it is one of the most subtle early morning conditions that triggers strokes and silently forms blood clots before you even take your first steps of the day. Let me explain exactly why this happens. When you sleep, blood flow slows and pools naturally in the lower part of the body. This is normal, but as we age, the veins in our legs lose elasticity, the valves weaken, and circulation becomes sluggish. So when an older adult wakes up and sits without moving, the blood that pooled during the night continues to stagnate in the legs instead of rising back toward the heart and brain. This creates a dangerous mismatch: thick, slow-moving blood in the legs, while your brain is desperately waiting for oxygen and nutrients after a long night. This stagnation can trigger strokes because when blood remains trapped in the legs, your blood pressure can spike as the heart tries to compensate to reach the brain. This sharp rise in pressure can rupture fragile vessels. Additionally, stagnant morning blood is a breeding ground for clot formation in the deep veins of the legs. A single stretch or sudden movement can dislodge such a clot, sending it upward to block a vessel instantly. Without the muscle pump action of the calves, older adults experience some of the lowest morning cerebral blood flow levels of the entire day. I once treated a 79-year-old man from Ohio who believed he was having balance issues every morning. He described a strange fog, his hands trembling slightly, and a moment of drifting vision whenever he rose from the bed. He assumed it was age, but what struck me was his routine. He sat on the edge of the bed for 25 minutes every morning, checking the news on his phone. His scans later revealed microclots in the small vessels of the brain, tiny silent injuries caused by poor circulation during that morning transition. When he shortened his sitting time and added gentle ankle rolls and shoulder movements before standing, those symptoms disappeared. Point number 3 is rushing to the bathroom the moment you stand up. Among my older patients across the United States, this is one of the most misunderstood morning habits. Many seniors wake up with urgency, often because of nighttime urination, and the very first thing they do is stand up quickly and rush straight to the bathroom. It feels necessary, but for adults over 60, this simple action creates one of the most dangerous physiological shifts of the entire day. During the night, your blood pressure naturally drops, your heart rate slows, and your circulation becomes steady and quiet. When you suddenly move from lying down to standing, your body must instantly compensate to maintain blood flow to the brain. In older adults, the cardiovascular reflexes are weaker, causing a moment of orthostatic stress, a sudden drop in blood pressure as gravity pulls blood toward the legs. If you move too quickly, the brain is left briefly undersupplied with oxygen, causing dizziness and instability. The risk escalates sharply when this vulnerability is combined with the bathroom rush. To urinate, especially after holding urine overnight, your body engages the Valsalva maneuver, a reflex where you momentarily increase pressure in the chest and abdomen. This action strains the cardiovascular system. For someone over 60, the combination of standing too fast, walking with urgency, and then straining creates a dangerous cascade. The sudden rise and fall of pressure can rupture fragile vessels or destabilize blood flow in areas affected by aging plaque. Indeed, many early morning strokes occur in or near the bathroom where these rapid shifts take place. I remember a 76-year-old woman from Michigan who came to my clinic after experiencing 2 frightening episodes, brief blackouts each morning right after getting to the bathroom. She thought they were just age catching up, but her routine revealed the truth. She jumped out of bed the moment her eyes opened, hurried to the bathroom, and strained. Her blood pressure readings showed sharp drops, followed by sudden spikes, and she later learned she had suffered 2 tiny TIAs, silent mini strokes, triggered by those abrupt transitions. Number 4 is skipping breakfast or taking morning medications on an empty stomach. Among older adults in the United States, this habit has quietly become part of modern morning culture, with many seniors engaging in intermittent fasting or simply forgetting to eat. But as a physician who has treated thousands of older Americans, I can tell you that starting the day without food is one of the most dangerous early morning stressors you can place on the brain. Not eating in the morning changes your physiology in ways that can trigger strokes. During the night, your body burns through stored glucose to keep your brain functioning. When you wake up, your brain expects replenishment, but as we age, the liver becomes less efficient at releasing stored glucose. This makes older adults far more vulnerable to morning hypoglycemia or low blood sugar. The brain is the most sensitive organ in your body and has almost no ability to store energy. It needs a steady flow. When the brain does not get that supply, it senses a threat and releases stress hormones, especially cortisol and adrenaline, to force glucose out of the bloodstream. This hormonal surge tightens blood vessels, which can raise blood pressure to unsafe levels. Furthermore, low glucose alters platelet activity and thickens blood consistency, creating the perfect environment for clot formation. This is why skipping breakfast is linked to a higher risk of ischemic stroke in seniors. Additionally, medications become more dangerous on an empty stomach. Without food, drugs like blood pressure pills can hit the bloodstream too quickly, creating sudden drops or fluctuations that destabilize circulation. I once cared for a 72-year-old man from Florida who believed he was doing something healthy by skipping breakfast and drinking only black coffee. He began experiencing short waves of confusion, shaky hands, and difficulty recalling words around 10 o'clock in the morning. A scan later revealed he had suffered a small morning TIA, likely caused by the combination of low blood sugar, dehydration, and medication taken without food. Once he added a small morning meal, just yogurt, a boiled egg, or a few walnuts, his symptoms disappeared completely. The 5th habit is starting your day with stress, checking the news, emails, or social media too soon. Of all the morning habits I see in older Americans, this one is quietly becoming the most destructive. It involves something far more subtle and dangerous for an aging brain: early morning stress. For many seniors, the day begins the moment the phone lights up with news alerts, financial updates, or political headlines. Your brain is flooded with stimulation before your feet even touch the floor. To your 60, 70, or 80-year-old nervous system, this is a shock delivered at the most vulnerable moment of the day. The human body is already wired to experience a natural cortisol surge in the early morning hours, peaking between 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. to help you wake up. When you add emotional stress to this physiological stress, you create a powerful spike in blood pressure and a constriction of already stiff blood vessels. This immediate drop in blood flow to critical areas of the brain is the exact kind of pressure surge that brain specialists like me dread. This combination triggers strokes because when emotional stress tightens blood vessels that are already constricted by morning cortisol, the sudden pressure increase can rupture a fragile artery. Studies repeatedly show that strokes occur more often in the morning because the brain is caught in this exact storm of pressure. I treated a 72-year-old Vietnam veteran from Texas who used to start every day watching the news. He admitted it got his blood boiling. Over several weeks, he experienced episodes of flashing lights in his vision and brief confusion, signs of transient ischemic attacks. His blood pressure log showed dramatic early morning surges, sometimes reaching dangerous levels within minutes of waking. When he stopped turning on the news and instead spent 10 quiet minutes breathing and walking, the episodes vanished. This brings us to habit number 6, ignoring morning blood pressure checks. When I speak with older adults, I am often told, "Doctor, I only check my blood pressure when something feels wrong." This causes deep concern because, for adults over 60, the most dangerous blood pressure surge happens quietly and visibly every single morning, whether you feel it or not. During the early morning hours, the body experiences what we call the dawn phenomenon. Cortisol rises sharply, adrenaline increases, and the cardiovascular system pushes blood harder to prepare for the day. In the older body, where arteries are stiffer and plaque is more common, this natural surge becomes risky. It is the single period of the day when blood pressure reaches its highest volatility, often happening before breakfast and before medications. Why does this matter? Because early morning hypertension is one of the strongest predictors of stroke in older adults. When morning blood pressure spikes, fragile brain vessels are suddenly hit with intense pressure. Even a small momentary surge can rupture a weakened vessel or worsen an existing blockage. This is why so many strokes happen between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. Also, if your pressure is already dangerously high before your medication begins working, which can take 30 minutes to an hour, your brain is left unprotected during the most unstable period of the day. I once cared for a 78-year-old man from Virginia who insisted his blood pressure was always fine because he only checked it in the evenings. When we asked him to measure it each morning for a week, the results were shocking. Evening readings were around 130/75, but morning surges reached as high as 180/95. He confessed he had been experiencing brief episodes of vision blurring, which were tiny warnings from the brain he had ignored. Finally, habit number 7, spending the first hour of the morning sitting still. Of all the morning habits, I warn my older patients about this one, is perhaps the most deceptively dangerous because it feels comfortable. But medically specifically for adults over 60, spending the first hour of the morning sitting still is one of the most powerful, silent drivers of stroke risk. When you wake up, your blood is naturally thicker from nighttime dehydration, your muscles are stiff, and your veins are relaxed. Movement is what helps the body adjust safely, but prolonged stillness traps the body in a state of poor circulation. When you sit for 30 to 60 minutes, your calf muscles, which act as the body's natural pump to push blood back toward the heart, remain inactive. The blood in your lower body sits stagnant, cooling and thickening. Meanwhile, your brain is demanding oxygen after hours of sleep, but the sluggish circulation struggles to deliver it. This creates an internal traffic jam. This stagnation can trigger strokes because the heart compensates by increasing pressure, which can rupture fragile areas of the brain. Stagnant blood is also clot-forming blood. The longer it sits still in the veins, the easier it is for platelets to clump together. I cared for a 74-year-old retired engineer from Colorado who followed the same ritual every morning, wake up and sit quietly in his recliner with the newspaper for nearly an hour. He began experiencing sudden spells of blurred vision and tingling fingertips around 9 a.m. His scans revealed multiple tiny clots and silent microstrokes formed during those periods of stillness. When we changed his routine to include just 5 minutes of light movement, like marching in place or arm circles, his symptoms stopped completely. Your brain is asking for attention and your body is asking for compassion.